All right, welcome to AgencyRise, the podcast where digital marketing agencies rise together. I'm your host, Chris Rudolph. I've spent over a decade coaching digital agency founders, helping them scale, systemize operations, and break free from the day-to-day grind. On this podcast, we'll talk about what really moves the needle. We'll talk about client acquisition, focus, pricing and positioning, leading a team, systems, and freedom. There's no hype here, no guru nonsense, just real conversations from the agency trenches. So today I'm joined by Adam Torgelson, the founder of TORQ Media. Adam is a seasoned SEO and content entrepreneur who's built a massive network of high traffic publishing properties and helping brands amplify their visibility and revenue through strategic content and thought leadership, and does some really innovative things. So Adam, welcome to the podcast.
Yep. Happy to be here. Thanks, Chris.
All right. Well, Adam, first of all, tell me a little bit about you and your firm.
TORQ Media is something I founded on my own, and I'm glad I did it that way. If I were to go back and try and do it all over again, I still would have told myself, yes, do this on your own. I've started other businesses since then with partners, and I've learned something about myself in the last 15 years of operating businesses. I don't like doing the counsel with other people that I've got to pass by my ideas through. But I do like hiring outside consultants to kind of bounce ideas off of and get their input. So TORQ Media is something that I started when I was in my 20s. This was shortly after I left SEO.com. And that's literally where I cut my teeth in the SEO industry. Back in 2007, my very first job out of college, I got a journalism degree from a university, and I worked at the newspaper, and I really thought that writing for a living was going to be how I made money. Turns out it was partly true, because what I like to call the dark side of SEO is you need some journalistic skills and training, I think. But when I was at SEO.com, working on massive Fortune 100 company projects like Dell and Alpha Graphics, I realized pretty quickly that the guys I was working with that interfaced with me, who had jobs in those corporate level marketing jobs at those companies, they had no idea what they were doing. And it was like, I was almost like learning as I went with their stuff, but I knew so much more than they did, even after just a couple of months of getting taught by some really, really long-term veterans in the SEO industry. And that's one of the greatest things. If I were to tell anybody starting a business, is find people that are doing what you want to do, who've been doing it in some way or another, and try and get them to mentor you.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I love that, Adam. I would agree. Finding out exactly who is doing or is where you want to be or the type of skills that you want, and just starting, whether it's having coffee or setting up a virtual coffee or taking them to lunch or invite them to be a mentor. That's awesome. That's awesome. That's great. Well, tell me, just how things progressed and kind of how you work with different agencies now.
Well, after I left SEO.com, I tried to start my own agency with some partners, and that did not go well. They sued me, and it just blew up in our faces. So I had to go back and get a corporate job somewhere, and I worked at a PR agency. And during that time, I had been dabbling with building some of my own really basic blogs on the side, just to sort of test some of my own SEO theories, really. But then those sites started to get traffic, and I had AdSense on them. So I was making like $100 a month. And then I got one client who came to me and said, "Hey, can I publish some articles on your site? I'll pay you X amount of money per article." And that to me was like an insane amount of money at the time, that what they were offering. And this was on a site that I acquired back in 2012. This was back when PageRank was the only indicator that we had to look at how valuable a link was. And I bought that site using a loan from one of my friends. I just took a huge bet. And again, the amount of money back then was more than my monthly income. But today, I could spend that on like going to a conference. So it's really interesting to look back and see how much things felt like they cost compared to now. But that first site, I had to get a loan to buy it. It started making money. People approached me to start publishing guest posts on it. And that's kind of how I stumbled into that mode of that industry to make money. And so I just started to double down. Every time I paid off one of my sites through income, I'd go and acquire another one and another one and another one. And it started to snowball. And today I've got over 1,000 agencies that I've worked with in one way or another. There's a couple that are just monthly subscribers that just pay to have access to publish on all my sites. And I don't have to acquire new sites anymore either, because other publishers who may own like one or a couple, I consult them on how to increase their revenue from their own sites. And in exchange, they give me publishing rights on their site.
Interesting.
So I don't have to spend any money acquiring new sites anymore.
Wow, that's amazing. So in essence, you're creating like a digital asset. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a lot like real estate operates. You can do so much with it, and you don't even have to own it outright. Somebody else can own the land. You can just have access to it and build on top of it and share the revenue, and everybody wins.
Yeah, maybe tell me a little bit how agencies, like how do they, how does it all work? Like when they work with you?
There's a handful of ways. Probably one of the more common ways is so agencies will have lower level SEO folks who are hunting for sites to guest post on. And a lot of my sites will show up in those kind of searches just in Google or ChatGPT or whatever. And they'll find the contact form on the site, which all funnels to my team. And then we have an auto response system because they'll just say, hey, can we publish on your site? And they'll automatically get a reply and say, yes, here's how much it costs. And we get new business from just that. And those are very one at a time, one-off transactional sort of things. And that's okay, but it's not my preference because it's not consistent, number one. Number two, the time it takes for an agency to pay off those invoices, it's all over the place. Sometimes they don't even pay. So I don't like that either. And so what we always try and do is, yes, we'll help the agency publish their guest post, however many they want. It's usually like between 1 and 2. And then I introduce them to the rest of my sites through an automated sequence. And that really kind of opens their mind to the possibility of there's a lot of sites available to do this model. And by no means am I the only person who's got a network of sites that I control. But the other option an agency would have is to go to an aggregator or like a marketplace of somebody who connects with publishers and just lets the publisher and the advertiser work with each other, a bit like an eBay or an Amazon of sorts. And there's some inherent problems with that because the marketplace doesn't own the sites themselves, nor do they have access to publish on them. And the publishers can reject things that they want to, and makes things difficult to actually be a smooth, operational, consistent source of success. And so I saw all that, and I've tried to set up my operation in a completely opposite way, where I give my agencies, where I'd like to give my agencies just logins to my sites. It's not admin login, but it's enough access where they can upload their own content and hit the publish button and it goes live. And no one on my team has to be involved in that whole process.
Wow, that's great. So that's very, very hands off. I love that.
Yeah. And that was intentional because I knew there was no way I could manage that volume of content, doing it one at a time, me logging in, publishing. It just is not a great way to scale. And that's what I've been working towards, is just being able to scale it and automate it, and still make it a valuable resource for the agencies that use it. And so far, it seems to be doing that.
I love that. I love that. So, like, you've been doing this quite a few years. Like, what have been some of your biggest wins or highlights so far?
One of my biggest wins was learning how to leverage my ability to monetize and my consulting around just SEO operations in general. Because I've got so much data, having published over 500,000 articles across thousands of different sites. I've seen what actually moves the needle. I can tell agencies when they are looking at using my sites, they'll ask for my advice. And I can tell them unequivocally, here's what works because I've seen it on the back end. I control all this stuff. I host this stuff. And so I can see, if you put this many links in your content, if you write it to a certain length, here's the things that matter and here's the things that don't. So when I realized that I just inherently had that knowledge, I stumbled into being able to add that as a big differentiating factor for doing what I do. Link building is probably one of the most overhyped and competitive things in the SEO world, maybe besides content writing. Those two things are very scrutinized and it's hard to differentiate yourself. And I felt like when I realized that I had all this knowledge in my head and I started to give it away to the agencies that were coming, that's when things really seemed to go much smoother for me because my clients stayed a lot longer. They really appreciated having access to that knowledge, and that it really helped me fulfill my purpose on this earth, I think, which is to build and share and teach. Those are things I've always loved doing.
I love that. I think that's something that I always recommend for agencies is to not just be the service that you deliver, but more than that. So, like you're saying, like it's not just link building or guest publishing. You're getting consulting, you're getting insights that are so much more than that. Like if someone is a graphic designer who builds websites, can you have just different branding or helping the brand focus about what they're all about, those things that are above and beyond everyone else that might be competition. So I love that you do that.
Yeah, it's very fulfilling too. I wish I would have been doing it all along, but that's the one downside to not having partners probably, is that you can't see your own weaknesses very well. I know I can't. And so either having a partner or a mentor or somebody who's outside looking in, they can tell you that stuff a lot faster, and so you can accelerate your progress a lot better with outside perspectives like that.
Yeah, that's so true. Like we have tunnel vision, which is a blessing, but sometimes, yeah, we have blind spots or don't have that additional perspective. So I know those were some of the highlights. What have been some of the toughest lessons that you've learned so far?
Um, well, I've been sued 6 times in the last 10 years, and all of them seem to revolve around content and image plagiarism or copyright issues. And there's a lot of fraud in that industry. And I learned the hard way that there are just services that go out and contact webmasters for uploading images that sometimes are copyrighted, sometimes not. And they scare people into settling or paying money or something. I don't know how many other people are getting these emails, but I've got to imagine everybody who owns a blog has probably been emailed a cease and desist letter. And some of these guys are scary. And I one time I did settle and paid them the money. And then I got contacted by the same firm again, like 3 months later, same exact template email, same style. And so from now on, all I do, if they email me about a very specific image and they say, you gotta take it down and we're gonna take you to court, I will always take it down and then I will ignore everything else that they ever send me. And I know that there are use cases for that service. Like there are images and content being copyright stolen and plagiarized, and AI especially is a big culprit of that. So it is a problem in the industry, but I kind of got caught up in it. I don't know how they targeted me, but it was those were some of the worst days I ever had when I got those. Sometimes they sent me emails, but sometimes they sent me letters in the mail. Like,
Man.
yeah, very emotionally scary.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Wow. Is there any tips, or I imagine, in our audience, there's got to be people that have kind of faced something, especially in this kind of day of AI. Yeah, what would be the like steps or resources to seek out if that happens? Do you have anything that would be
Well, yeah, and I should have been doing this. I should have been policing this all along a little bit better, but there are several copyright free image repositories like Pixabay. That's one big one that you can use for free. You don't have to give copyright credit or anything. And if you just stick to doing that, you will never run into any problems. And they just have so many images. And I don't know who created that site, but God bless that guy, whoever he was.
Yes.
It's
Yeah, I
been
know
so,
Pexels
yeah.
is another one. Yeah, no, yeah, those are great sites. I agree with you. Um, Overall, like what's working really well right now?
Well, if you wanted me to get really specific, it's been really fun to watch how everybody is now trying to show up in uh, LLM search queries and be in the top X, Y, or Z tool or service or whatever. And I I follow a lot of guys on LinkedIn who say this is how you show up in those searches and blah blah blah. And my sites show up in those searches all the time. And it's not by doing anything different than what we've already been doing for the last 5, 10 years, even. There are certain things that get that the LLMs use to build their data sets. And so specifically, some of those are writing listicles. Those exploded in popularity within the last 5 years. But those seem to be one of the bigger signals that LLMs look at when they're putting together top 10 whatever lists of things. So getting your brand mentioned in some listicles on sites that are in Google News or are relevant for your industry or local to your area, those three things, if you publish about 30 listicles on those types of sites, you're going to seed most of the LLMs and show up for a bunch of different queries. Like literally, it's that simple.
That's interesting because yeah, you do see a lot like SEO is dead and like, everything that has worked for 20 years is kind of thrown out the window, but that sounds like that's not the case anymore. Or that never was the case.
Well, all I can tell you is from what I see on my own sites and what my clients are doing. So it's a very small data set, to be honest. But that's what I get to see from my perspective.
Mhm. Yeah, and what's not working well right now in that space?
I've had clients in the past, and I don't know where they got this idea from, but they would publish just dozens of articles on the same site. Let's say one of my sites is timesla.com. They'd publish a series of articles all about the same client with the same links. That kind of stuff, if it ever worked, definitely does not work now. But that sort of duplication is just a waste of everybody's time. Duplicating content, honestly, press releases, people still pay for those. Maybe because they have to, because they're public companies. But if you're not a public company, I don't know why you would ever send out a press release on a wire. I run press releases across my sites. I'm connected to one of the major wires that I get their releases. They get picked up, they publish, and zero people see them.
What would you recommend those companies do instead? Like instead of just kind of the traditional press release?
Industry publications, Google News sites, and local news sites. Again, those are the three powerhouse type of sites that you should target individually. If you're trying to get a message out, it's more a function of connecting with individual sites, giving them unique content every time. And that is not hard to do anymore because of AI.
Yeah, that's interesting. How has this space changed as AI has been, advancing and more widely adopted?
Some of my agency clients started to just generate huge amounts of content and publish it as fast as they possibly could. And that it just didn't move the needle for them. And so what everybody's found at this point, I think if they haven't already, they will soon, is that AI is good at reviewing content for errors like factual, grammatical, spelling, things like that. It's really good at helping you clarify your ideas and structure things well. But the creativity of generating the story that goes in the content, it's just AI is terrible at that. So you need humans to be running the ship still, but getting it to a point where it's polished and ready to publish, hand that off to AI for the most part.
Mhm.
And that really helps speed up the whole content production process.
Well, as far as with, in your day to day and in your business, like what are some tools, systems, or daily habits that you swear by?
I swear by writing things down that I want to accomplish. And at the end of the day, reviewing what those things were. If I start my day by either having a list on my phone or that I've written down and checking them off, that really helps me. I'm very much a checklist sort of guy. And that's a much more of an operational mindset sort of thing. But also getting up and going to bed at the same time each day if you can, and starting your day with the thing that helps you feel the best, whether that's going to the gym, reading a book, reading the scriptures, praying, sitting in the sauna. There's so many things you can do to just set yourself up for a successful day. And you get to control that. That's the part that I like. We all get to control how we approach our day and our life. And so, no matter who you are, whether you're just getting started, intern level, or whether you're the CEO of a $100 million company, those daily habits are just critical.
I love that. I love that. That's like just really priming your day with what you can control and like brings you life and joy and fills you up. That's that's awesome. What uh, what about any tools or software that's really helpful for you on a day to day basis?
Well, I think the obvious ones, most of the Google products I am using constantly. I'm a big Google Workspace guy. I use a combination of a couple different AI tools, ChatGPT and Claude being the two most common ones for me. And when I go in and consult with agencies around cutting costs and helping everybody save time, it's usually a combination of those sort of software-ish type of tools, but also anybody who's running an agency that's got over 15 full-time employees. There is, and they're based in the US especially, there's a way to reduce payroll taxes. And a lot of small business owners don't know it exists. It's called a Section 125. It's been on the IRS books for 40 years.
Tell us more about that. This is interesting.
Yeah. It reduces payroll taxes by $55 a month per employee that you've got. And it only works if you've got about 15 or more W2 full-time employees in the United States. It actually gives the employees a minimum essential coverage health benefits plan. And the employer reduces their FICA taxes, $55 a month per employee. And anybody can use it. And especially once you get to 50 full-time employees, you have to give your employees benefits. That's an ACA requirement in the US. This counts as minimum essential coverage for that ACA requirement. So the larger you get, the more you have to start looking at employee benefits. Section 125 is one of those things that's like sort of a secret. Not a lot of people have heard of it or know about it, but what all of my agency clients that I talk to, I tell them, yes, implement this. And a lot of times, if they do, the cost savings on their taxes will pay for my monthly tool. That's how much they pay.
Interesting. Yeah.
Well, that's why I always bring it up, because whenever I consult, I like to do things that are either a net positive or at least don't cost them anything. And that's one of those things. It's a net positive every single time.
Man, that's gold. I love that. Do you have any other things that are like that kind of bring that net positive or neutral?
Well, in the agency world, I don't have anything that would impact an agency, but if an agency owner is thinking about their own taxes, there are two amazing tax strategies that, again, if you are an S Corp specifically, and I suggest everybody who's making, 6 figures a year, look at turning your LLC into an S Corp. Obviously, consult your CPA or your tax
Yeah.
professional. I don't have a license in either one of those things. But there's one strategy called the Augusta rule, and that came about because of the Augusta golf tournament, where an individual can rent their personal residence to their business every month. And that's special because that rent payment, you just transfer it from your LLC bank account to your personal bank account. And it's a rent payment, but it's not taxable income to your personal taxes. And it's a write off on your business taxes. So again, I'm not a tax professional, but this is what I do myself. You could take that money, since it's coming to you tax free, you could put it back in the business if you wanted to.
Oh, that's good. I like it.
And don't quote me on that, but that's potentially what you could do with that. That's called the Augusta rule or the Augusta strategy. The other one is if you have kids that are old enough to do work for you, and I would say kids as young as 8 years old can do work. There's another tax strategy. It's called a family management company, where you send money from your LLC to the family management bank account. That bank account distributes money to your kids every month, and you can pay them up to $1,300 a month each.
Wow, that's significant. Yeah.
And that money is tax deductible on your LLC taxes, and it doesn't show up as income to your kids. So you can use that money to pay for things that you normally wouldn't be able to use as write-offs, like braces or fixing your car, stuff, life. So those two strategies alone save me 60 to 100,000 in write-offs, just right off the top every year.
Wow. That is awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Adam. Those are things to definitely check in with your tax professional to see what's possible, because that is huge. Awesome. Yeah. What's something that you're looking to simplify within your business right now?
And I focus on that heavily. So if I can find a tool that does this, this is what I'm going to do. But find a way to automate all of my email. I don't know if I can, but that's what I want to do because so much of the email that comes into me, I really don't have to engage with it. It's either a notification or it has to be forwarded to somebody or whatever the case may be. And if I could do that one thing, I mean, the amount of time I would have in the day would just skyrocket.
That's good. That's good. What's one piece of advice you'd give to all the founders out there listening to this?
I would say don't be afraid to suck. And when you make mistakes, own them because honesty and transparency will go really long ways, especially the longer you are in the marketing industry. It's sort of a small world. The more you get into it and the more people you connect with and the more client work you do, there's never a downside to owning your mistakes. And you will fail, and it's just part of the process. So please learn from those failures so that the same ones don't happen again. And I'll reiterate this: find a mentor who's been there, and don't be afraid to swing for the fences. There are guys that I never thought would have given me the time of day who've just been so gracious with their time. And those have been some of the most productive conversations I've ever had that accelerated my career and my learning. And one of the best stories I have of that is the guy who founded SEO.com, Dave Bascom. He no longer works there, but he brought me on as the third employee back in 2007. There's just him and one of his co-founders, and they were just starting to expand. And they brought me in knowing next to nothing about SEO. And Dave was just the nicest guy. He let me pick his brain. He allowed me to fail and didn't punish me for it. And we did have some big blow ups that almost lost clients. I never lost a client in the whole time I was working there, as far as I recollect. Dave, if you ever watch this, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But he was almost like a father figure to me. My dad wasn't around when I was growing up. So I think I may have spent more time grooming mentors for myself than other young men might have because they had father figures in their life. I didn't. So that's something that I naturally just tried to attract to myself. But it always pays off.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. I would agree, and that some people that you might think. I love when you said what you said about shooting for the fences because it's surprising. A lot of times, those people that have had a lot of success in their field, everyone else is kind of assuming that they wouldn't get the time of day. So very few people a lot of times ask. And everyone that I have talked to in a lot of different fields, they're at the top. Like they always had people that gave them a shot and sewed into them. And if they're able, they tend to be very willing to help out. So I'm glad you mentioned that. I also take this, for our audience as well. Be on the lookout for others that are, up and coming behind you that you can do that for them. You don't have to be 5 steps ahead of them. You can be a half step ahead of them. But how can you sow like what you've learned? Obviously, we all, if you own or co-own a business, like you make a lot of mistakes. You run into things that you wish you would change. Well, why not turn that into some great wisdom and either a warning or tips for another one coming up, and that can make the biggest difference for them as well.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
Awesome, Adam. Well, if our audience wants to learn more about you and your business, where's the best place to find you online?
That's a good question. I've been asked many times, and I'm going to try this once, see how it goes. People should text me. I'm going to put my personal cell phone number on this podcast. I've done this one time before on a podcast that had a couple thousand listeners, and one person texted me. So my personal cell phone in the US is 801 602 9873. Text me.
I love it. I love it. That's bold. I love that. Well, Adam, thank you so much for coming on the show today. And everyone who's tuning in at the gym, in your car, at your desk, or wherever you are, thank you for joining us. If this episode was helpful, make sure that you subscribe and share it with another agency founder who needs to hear it, because agencies don't rise alone, they rise together. This is Agency Rise.